Hello and good morning. This is AI 101 with Pete, and it's March 2nd, 2024. Hey, Corey. And I'm going to share my screen and share a HackMD, actually the HackMD from yesterday, and we'll kind of get into it. I've got my Midjourney running here. Sorry, it's got scary skulls up the top. It's actually on relax right now, and it's about 3 cute jobs. So it's got, after this one, it's got 4 or 3 to go. So it's just going to sit there and I'll turn it on to fast when we actually want to do something. Okay, so now I'll do the HackMD thing. This is the HackMD from yesterday. HackMD is a way that we take notes. Probably most of you have gotten this pitch already, so I won't do it unless you need it.
It's a collaborative way we take notes.
Yeah, it's a collaborative way we take notes. Thank you, RJ. It's a little early here where I am. I think I'm feeling a little bit slow getting started. I didn't have well, I had the ideas I had to work on today. Uh, Let me show you so one of the background things I think we should be doing in AI 101 or building 101 or whatever we'll end up calling it. Our space name is in transition with the guild transitions. So I think this is kind of the stuff that I wanted to make sure that we covered for anybody who attends and anybody who wants to make sure that they can get through any of these things. So one of my observations is to use AI well, you kind of need to use your computer well. And so that's why I've got these things in the front. Let me make this, actually another thing, let me make my screen bigger. And to do that, I'll have to reshare. Mac has gotten really good at changing. If you change the screen resolution, it just changes really well. I'm impressed. What I mean by that is the size of the windows and stuff stayed relatively the same. Actually, probably as much as it could. These 2 windows don't want to get any smaller than that. Usually on a screen with smaller text, I have them half, but they don't want to get less wide than half, or less wide than over half. Okay, so building blocks. You should always use a password manager. You should use some personal knowledge text-based personal knowledge manager like Obsidian or Notion, or maybe you're an interesting person to use Miro or something like that instead, which is not quite text, or text and diagrams. No basic markdown. Be able to use a collaborative markdown editor like HackMD, and ideally know how to show other people the same thing. So then if this is all knowledge that you've got, then we can talk about using, this is an interesting list. I made local primary, and I didn't even write down yet cloud ones. I guess maybe that's not an AI 101 thing. You can, if you have Llama file or something like it on your computer, then it's always there, even if you don't have the cloud, even if you're not paying a subscription. Kind of the same thing with Stable Diffusion, I guess. That's why I kind of did it that way. And then I think it's really important to use at least GPT-4 instead of 3.5. And so then you kind of have to start paying for that. To pay for that, if you have an OpenAI API key, you can buy it wholesale instead of retail at I don't know, like a penny or so for 1,000 tokens instead of $20 a month. So this is like the super, super basic, and I've kind of meant to, continue to add to this. So that's a background of things that I want to cover in AI 101. For today, We can either cover some of these things if people are interested or don't have them checked off for themselves yet. We could expand this and list all the things that we think are other important. Yeah, Corey use comes out way less than $20 a month. Although I have to say I haven't used it. Well, well, you have to use a ton of API stuff for to get up to $20 a month. The If we want to dig into that a little bit more, why we might use I still have I can, I guess I can kind of afford the $20 a month for ChatGPT, and you don't get access to GPTs if you're doing the AI API way. If you want to make GPTs, I think they do have in the API, they have a way to do that kind of. It's not, it's a little bit more complicated, but actually, Corey, it might actually be a good thing for you. I think you might have a little bit more control, and you might like it. It would take a little bit of setup. Yeah, Scott,
Can
you mean?
I, oops. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Scott, you
No,
mean
no, no.
the virtual app?
You're addressing the chat issue, so I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Yeah. Scott, you mean the mobile app? It turns out uh, to get into this a little bit more, there's an interface that I started using a long time ago, and it's changed a little bit. So I have a version that I've kept with uh, the same version from last year, and it still works fine. Um, this is going to take 10 or 20 seconds to load, I think, which is always a little bit scary. Oh, right, it's broken. I don't know why it's broken. Um, I've, I, this is a web-based thing that's very much like the regular ChatGPT interface, and I've got that on my phone as a website. You push the icon, and it looks like an app, but it's really a website. It worked actually pretty well, and in some ways it was better than the official one. So even that, oh, GPTs. Yeah, Corey, maybe we should. Um, Maybe we should look at what you get through the API with GPTs, because you can do similar stuff, but you might have more control of it, especially if you want to lock stuff down. Um, I don't know if maybe let's not do that today, because I should do maybe some research and I could present it faster that way. So things to do today, go through this, make this list longer. The other things that I've got kind of on my desktop, one of them is a Python script I got started writing with a friend. What it does is you give it a text, and it takes the text and chunks it up into smaller pieces, and then feeds it to GPT-4. And the intent of it is to kind of do spell checking or something like that, for a long, like a 60,000 word text. You can just give it to this thing, and it chunks it up and processes like 1,000 words at a time or something like that, and then puts it back together. That one is like half done, because instead of putting the text back together, it puts the feedback from ChatGPT. Are there any spelling mistakes or something like that? So the output right now is, no, this section looks fine. No, this section looks fine. No, this section looks fine. So we could actually like iterate on that and get a little bit better. Another thing on my desktop is publishing a newsletter, subscription-based newsletter of very pretty Midjourney images. So I've got a process where it's early in the morning. It's super funny. Pretty pictures. I've got like a bunch of images that I've chosen kind of as my top things. And right now I've got 50 in this bucket and 45 in this bucket. I need to pick like 9 from each, and then assemble those in Gumroad as an email that will get sent out today. I have to do that today, no matter what. So um, doing it together with you guys, you get to see a lot of back end interesting stuff. Sorting through images with Phoenix Slide, how to use Gumroad to sell a newsletter, um, how to do some post processing with some command line tools I've got written to like take care of metadata and stuff like that. So I think we did some of that kind of in a rush yesterday. We could do that a little bit more slowly and actually get the work done at the same time.
There was a question
Um,
about what is Gumroad for?
um, I use Gumroad in it's for a couple different things. Let's talk about it. Um, and let me think about what to present. Um, I haven't I haven't really told people. Hang on just a sec. My volume went wacky, and I've got my keyboard set the wrong way. Um, Gumroad is for selling digital things. And I haven't told people this yet in AI Salon, except for in shameless promotion. So it turns out that I've been working with a couple partners trying to figure out how to present AI courses and maybe AI artifacts too, like virtual backgrounds or something like that. I have a lot of virtual backgrounds kind of stored up, and I've wanted to get them into a store. So Gumroad is a um, place to buy and sell things depending on what side of the what side of that you're on. And actually, I guess I kind of use it for both. Let me show you as a customer of Gumroad. And I'm going to take this off screen for just a sec to make sure there's nothing I don't want to show as I click dashboard. And there kind of is. Um, so this is, there's a weird thing here. Chrome and Gumroad ended up deciding that I was always in mobile mode. So you can see this is set up to be like this and not like that. So anyway, if I go to Gumroad, this is my personal account on Gumroad. It's like, hey, dude, we could sell stuff for you. And, you know, I'm going to have to, oh, now I know that what, no, I know why it was, it was mobile because I had zoomed, and Chrome does a thing now where it remembers the zoom for each site. So that was the problem. So I could make a product. I could make a, set of files, like a set of images or zip files if I was distributing a software product, or I could make an ebook or a course. Um, a membership is a little bit like having a Patreon account. This kind of blows my mind that you can sell physical things, but I guess that makes sense too. This is my personal view. And then I've bought things on Gumroad, like digital painting courses and software, actually. So I can go to my library, and these are all the things that I've bought on Gumroad. GPT client from the guy who makes Mac Whisper, which I really like. I don't use this. Well, maybe this is even another one. This is a course for Procreate and stuff, Mac Whisper, which I love. More art stuff. So there you go. So now let me do this again and switch to my partnership account where I work with other people. So this is the back end. This is a product that I've set up and I'm selling right now that, well, this is actually the page that you get if you go to the site. If you go to store.passionatepeople.com, you get we have two products listed right now. Obsidian with Pete for whatever you want, and Pretty Pictures with Pete for $5 a month. I think there's a 50% off discount coupon still lying around in shameless promotion. So then if I go to these, let's see, if I go to these on the Gumroad site rather than the Passionate People site, I can edit this product. And this is how I created this product. Set up the description, set up the things to sell in here, a bunch of zip files. And then I also send out regular emails as part of the main product is this actually. So editing an email looks like this. Just this is just an email editor, and I drag and drop Pretty Pictures into here and get it all set up. So yesterday I was showing the process I've got written down for this because there's a bunch of little fiddly steps to do. And this I keep evolving this every time I do a newsletter. I update this. This has actually gotten reasonably far away from. I've gotten it faster and better. So to do it right, I would actually edit this a little bit and make this better. So cool, Scott. So where should we go? Where should we go? Or I can pick.
Sorry, I was on mute. Could we look at your HackMD list again, please?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I was just going to ask some questions about Markdown because why do you think that the average person needs Markdown? Just trying to understand.
It, like if you're never going to use HackMD and you're never going to use Obsidian, maybe you don't. It's I don't know if I can make an analogy or something like that. It's like there was a funny thing. I used to live in LA, and a lot of people who live in LA can only get someplace if the freeway goes there. And this, I guess this knowledge, this story comes from a time before Google Maps, because now Google Maps lets you get anywhere. But back in the olden days, um, uh, you had this big, thick map book, which was super useful, Thomas Brothers maps. But most people didn't. Is that, I can't quite hear you, and I'm not sure if you just got a hot mic.
It's probably just somebody needs to go on mute.
Yeah.
Let me look at I'm looking at the participants. I'll see who, all right, it seems like everybody's on mute now, so we're okay.
So in the olden days, if you couldn't get to it on the freeway, it didn't exist for most people. And it always surprised me because all you need to know is a little bit of the surface streets, and Los Angeles has these really long surface streets. You can get anywhere in LA. It's a big, massive, it's sprawled out place. You can get anywhere on surface streets. If you take just a little bit of time and energy, you get to many more places in LA. I feel like Markdown is kind of like that. You don't need it, but if you know it, you can do more stuff.
And that's with certain apps, right? Like you said,
Yeah,
Obsidian
it
and
is with only
yeah.
certain apps, but it turns out a lot of apps are like that, not just personal knowledge managers and not just collaborative text editors. And an example I have, um, this is Slack-like, a Slack-like. No, I don't want that one. That's the wiki maybe. This is a Slack like I run, and you can just type. Maybe I'll do a chat with myself, just so I can. Uh, this uh, understands I can use these formatting things, but really I think what it's doing under the hood is Markdown, and I can just use straight Markdown. So if I know a little bit of Markdown, I can say I want to make this bold uh, and this italic. So it's true that not all chat things take Markdown, but many of them do. And kind of wherever you go and input text, a lot of times a commenting system or um, a a a, um, a forum like
Like Discord, on Discord, I see sometimes it says it takes Markdown, or
yeah,
on,
Discord is a good
on social media sites, or yeah,
yeah,
lots of times it says it takes Markdown, and that can be
yeah.
helpful to structure a message. I think maybe another reason it might be useful to know Markdown, because I think AIs might be better at interpreting your information if you give it to it in Markdown. I'm not too sure. I think I read that somewhere.
Um, I think that's reasonable. Yeah. The system that ChatGPT uses in the background to make uh,
To make its results, it seems like it's using Markdown to
yeah,
create like its
it uses
tables and
yep,
numbering.
exactly. Um,
Yeah.
it's using Markdown in the background, and then if you give it Markdown, you can do some special things to highlight stuff certain ways.
And you can tell that if it gives you like two, what, asterisks or something like that, or 2 pounds. I can't remember what it is, but I see that a lot. I go onto Gemini and it does it when it puts its output,
Yeah,
and lots of times it's just temporary. It sometimes it like disappears
yeah.
because some software is converting it
You
to
see that
WYSIWYG,
yeah, you see that happen on
yeah.
you see it happen in here, I think, and then you see it happen in GPTs where somebody wants to format something. The way the GPTs work, if they put HTML uh, like a link or something in the GPT output, you'll see the HTML come across, and then it turns into a link. And if you can use HTML or Markdown, so you can see the Markdown happening, and then it turns, it gets rendered. So
Is knowing Markdown like a prerequisite that you really need to learn right away, or is it something like, well, maybe you can learn it, but maybe you don't even have to bother?
um, the to, I want to give a sideways answer to your question, but I won't. Um, the direct answer to your question is you can wait until later. And the part of the reason for that is just straight text, typing without anything, without knowing that Markdown even exists, just works, right? Um, so so in Obsidian or in that chat program I was showing, Mattermost, or or with ChatGPT, any place where you can type Markdown. If you don't type any Markdown, if you just type text, you're totally fine. Um, so you can learn it later. The sideways answer I was going to say is you can learn about 80 or 90% of Markdown in the time it took to give that answer. So it's like, why would you wait, so let's do that real quick. Let me try to demonstrate. So knowing Markdown, you want to be able to do bullets, um, which is, I'm going to say it's a dash and a space at the beginning of a line, and you see it over here. You want to know how to make things bold, which is 2 asterisks and then a word and then 2 asterisks. And you want to know how to make things italic, which is 1 underscore at both ends of something. And that's Markdown 101 right there.
Yeah.
Um, Markdown like 110 is I want to be able to make headers. This is a big header you can see and a smaller header. If I want to, and the way to do that is with hash mark space at the beginning of the line. And a thing to know is they get smaller and smaller. Uh, you can see HackMD has got a command completion thing going on here where I type a few and it says these are the things that you could keep typing and get, right? Um, the name of these header one, header two, header three is kind of inherited from HTML. You don't need to know that to know Markdown.
Pete,
Yeah.
before we move on, can you explain the difference between bullets and bullet two? Because I don't see any difference in what comes up when you type those in.
The difference is the text it says bullets and bullet two over here. I started the first bullet because I said bullets. All I meant by that was
Starting the
this,
list.
yeah, this could be a better list if it wasn't self-referential. So let me start it again and say milk, eggs, paper towels.
Awesome. Thank you.
So with this formatting and the headers, I think that's like all of Markdown, that you want for a while. The next level is, can I make a link? And a link is actually a little bit harder. You type the text that you want in a link because it's a link, not because people don't usually make links. But this is a link to a website where I want to say, the website name. And another thing that's kind of a next level thing, a 201 thing, is I can make a checkbox list by putting space, bracket, space, bracket. And then these actually work like checkboxes. In the text, you put an X to make it checked. And if it's rendered someplace, you can just check it.
Let me ask another question. So if a person would, I mean, yes, it is easy to learn the basics, but we all know learning, I mean, unless you use
Yeah,
it, you lose it. So I'm wondering, how would a person use it
continue to
enough
remember it.
where, where they don't really have a reason to use it, usually 98% of the time for now, at least.
Um, that's a great question, RJ. And I'll give the sideways answers first. um, there's like these four things: headers and bullets, not the check mark bullets. Let me make this simple again. Headers and bullets and bold and italic, you kind of use so much that, and they're so simple. There's only four things, and if you wrote them on a note card by your monitor, after a day or two or three, you'd probably remember them. And you're right. If you don't use it, uh, then you would lose it probably. But then this interlocks with the next step up in Computer 101. You should be taking notes all day, every day in Obsidian or something like Obsidian. And then, it's like you're just going to kind of remember how to do it. I mean, you keep doing it once or twice and you get that bullets work by typing a dash. And in Obsidian, you saw that it turns into renders right away, which is, and it's like in Obsidian, I guess this is yet another step, right? Now I'm having to learn how to use Markdown to make some simple information management stuff on a page. And that's yet another thing to learn. You're right. and I'll kind of come back to this, how to keep learning this, over the course of a couple weeks until it's kind of muscle memory. Um,
So it's definitely a prerequisite for Obsidian, then it seems.
it's not. Let me do
No?
an advanced Obsidian thing here and say split right. This is something you don't need to learn right away, even though it's not hard. It's useful. Um, uh, in Obsidian, by the way, you don't have to type this at the beginning of a page, but I really like to, the title of the page, and then this is the page, the file name. So I like to make sure those are the same. Um, uh, so let's do the same thing. If I didn't want to learn Markdown, didn't want to know Markdown, oops. I've got this two windows on the same page, which is a little bit confusing for me, but let me do it this way. So now I made another page. Really? No. Oh, this one is named that still, yeah. Okay. So pretend I don't know any Markdown, but I want to use Obsidian, right? I might say text example as the title. Maybe I wouldn't have titles. I would make a to-do list. It's going to be really hard for me not to type the Markdown, but and then I could even use something like, let's say I wanted to make a separator or something like that. I could do a separator with some weird character or whatever. I was going to do a thing like, this is the built-in GPT thing. I could do that without knowing any Markdown. If that had worked, it would have sent this out to GPT-4 as a prompt, and then filled out a paragraph of Snuffy the Bear. I recently rotating a password or an API key means you delete one and you start using a new one. I recently rotated my API key and I deleted the one that is set here. So to make that work, I'd have to fix it in settings, which I can either do to show how that works or not. So you can see I can keep the same kind of information in my own format. I don't know Markdown, and I might even have like a way of have to pick something that's not Markdown, but I might have a way of every time another thing that's kind of true is a lot of the stuff that Markdown wasn't invented in a vacuum. It took the things that people were already doing to make bullets or to make headers kind of, and it reused it. So I think most people who keep a list of stuff to do, for instance, in Microsoft Word or TextEdit or whatever, Notepad, they're already using something like a dash or a bullet in front of, sorry, a dash or an asterisk in front of a bullet. So, I probably would have, even before Markdown existed, I used to write Markdown basically. Um, so another thing, back to your question, RJ, how do you remember this if you don't, if it's hard to learn stuff, and if I don't remember how to do it, I think even Obsidian. So what I did there was my dog is on my lap, which is why. Um, uh, even if I I can, what I did for that was Command B, like I'm using Google Docs or Microsoft Word, Command I. I don't know how to make a bullet list in Obsidian without using, but I think it will work. Maybe not. Yeah, insert bullet list. So as a helper, um, uh, let's see, I think HackMD is kind of the same thing too. I can select that and click the I thing, or select this and click the B thing. So a lot of places where you edit Markdown, they'll have the escape valve of, either the command keys or the menu, like in Obsidian, or a set of formatting, stuff like that. And that's true even in Mattermost. So each of these programs came up, HackMD is a collaborative text editor first, and it uses Markdown second. Mattermost is a chat system first, and it uses Markdown second. And even Obsidian, in a way, is a text management system that uses Markdown second. Same thing here. If I want that italic, I can click that. If I want it bold, I can click that. So that's another help. And I guess I remember way back in the day when I was learning Markdown, and I had some different syntaxes which are similar to Markdown but not the same as Markdown. So I use those things as a crutch for for a little bit. So you can get the Markdown, you can get the system to do the Markdown for you by clicking a button or doing a command. And then you can look at, so what did that do? Oh yeah. Let me do use this as a demonstration or something. When I did
Yeah.
bold, I said star star bold star star, and then when I italic, I did underscore italic underscore. I didn't tell you a secret thing, which is it's actually not what character it is here, it's actually how many. So I think this will work. I never do this. And this will work. This is a confusing thing that I try not to tell people, but since we did that example, HackMD and Mattermost both used single star for italic and double stars for bold. I like to do it this way. There's kind of other reasons to do it. This is the way people used to do this before Markdown. They used to underline things with underscore, front and back. And they used to do bold with usually 1 star, but anyway. There you go. Markdown 101, 201, and a little bit of like 301 or something like that.
It seems like yeah, it seems like one reason you use it a lot is because you want to end up doing long form kind of publishing of what you're doing. So um, I get the impression that's why you do it, but also because you use Obsidian, and it seems like Obsidian is set up that way. I was trying LogSec, which is a
Yep.
different knowledge management system, and it wasn't making me do Markdown, I don't think. It was just
LogSafe.
WYSIWYG, like, but of
Yeah,
course
there you go.
it was creating markdown syntax in the little
Yeah.
files.
I I know Markdown so well that I use Markdown instead of trying to use it as a WYSIWYG thing, but I would imagine there's toolbars for Obsidian that let you do it. I so so it's a good guess that I use Markdown for long form stuff. I feel like I use it more for short form stuff, like like literally a single chat message. Um, very short stuff, right? And then the thing that I use, another thing that I feel like I use it most for is not for formatting to make it look pretty, but formatting to mean something. Um, so for me, the title of a page, and I always have
Like
a
to
title on my
outline it?
pages. It's an outliner, yeah. So I use, I use H2 to make sections, and sometimes I have H3s, the header, medium header and smaller header, and I use bullets. I use that a ton just to organize stuff. So this, this is just harder to read for me, and I could have taken this note in Notepad or something like that. I messed it up with the markdown there, but if this was just plain text, it's harder to read than if if it's separated with headers and bullets.
Okay, thanks.
I guess
Oh, there was
the
a couple of questions for you. There were
yeah,
some questions for you in the chat. Somebody's asking about the GPT client you use for Mac.
yep. Um, Corey, Markdown does not reduce characters. It actually adds a few characters. The reason you might use Markdown to talk to ChatGPT or even to set up your GPT is because, and Noemi, I'll get to your question in just a sec. If I'm talking to ChatGPT, and let me make this big so it looks like I'm not doing a bunch of stuff all at once. Um, this is a weird example because it's a computer thing, but uh, just this simple thing. I happen to know that backticks are the way that you make something look pre-formatted, it's called. Uh, um, Backticks, which is the character like top left of your keyboard, um, tells the uh, tells Markdown. Actually, it's important for one kind of thing. If I do Markdown inside of backticks, it it doesn't do it. It just writes it. It also uses this kind of computer font, so you can see that when people make examples of things, they use a computer font like that. So uh, if I do that here, I think ChatGPT is going to go, oh, he's talking like this is a computer command, not like it's a pet or something like that. That's kind of a simple example, but you can I that would probably actually work pretty well with bold too. Um, or italic, I guess. Um, Using a little bit of Markdown is kind of like, I could have used quotes here. You'll notice that I mangled the grammar here. So I guess ChatGPT would have figured out what I meant anyway. But if you give it a few hints of with bold, italic, or separating lines or things like that, it helps it kind of know what you're typing. Um, Noemi, I wonder if you would go off mute and ask your question. If you can't or don't want to, that's fine too. I can answer the question you typed in chat. But I didn't actually show a ChatGPT client for Mac, even though I do have one and I could show that. The thing that was going on in Obsidian is there's a plugin um, called text completion that you can type a line um, and then hit this button and it'll use GPT-4. It uses the GPT-4 API to complete it. Let me fix my API key real quick. and maybe we could show that. I can show a little bit. The rule of API keys is they're like passwords, and so actually what I can do is make a new one, and then I'll throw that one away later today. API keys sound like big fancy computer terms, but they're not fancy. They're just it just means get a password from get a get a password for servers basically.
I've actually signed up for the API key before I even got my GPT-4 like $20 a month membership, and it was just
Yep.
kind of like me playing around with it before I actually was able
Yeah.
to go in and sign up. But I didn't get a chance to play around with it, so it's interesting to see it as an integration rather than just in the interface that they had set up for it.
Yeah. If I use this more often, I would remember that this is platform. I remember that Claude has console.anthropic. So basically, you sign in, you make an account, and then you find the place where oops, I don't want to do that. So I can create a new key. I think it's important to give an API key a name that's that kind of says what it's for, and then also has a date. So the way API keys work, it shows it to you, and then it'll never show it to you again. So you have to copy this, and then copy its, put it in your password manager, which is why you're using a password manager. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use a Typora. Typora is a markdown editor I use along with Obsidian. So this is the API key. And then I can go over to, so this is like a password. I shouldn't be showing this to you, but I'm going to delete it, in 50 minutes. Normally I would put it in my password manager. So if I go to Obsidian and do settings, which on Mac is always for every app, it's command comma. Go to the text generator thing. This is my old key, which is dead. I just pasted the new key, so now it's theoretically alive. And then we can highlight this and click this. I guess this is a good example of a thing that you kind of like buy when you get when you're doing a wholesale thing. Sometimes you have to take a little bit more responsibility for stuff. I've also got now that the key worked, but that error message was the model doesn't exist that I've got selected. So let's fix that too. I'm going to try to be super generic. This is another reason to use the API. You can use different models pretty easily. Some of these are useful, some maybe for different reasons, maybe not. Yay, it's going to work. Folks, I apologize. I'm going to take my dog downstairs for a quick sec, and I'm going to keep talking, but I can answer questions while I'm talking. Or I can hear, I guess, and I can answer questions.
Thank you for demonstrating this, because I was really struggling with, sometimes in the chat GPT, like if I'm using my browser, it's really hard to keep track of like, okay, which of these interactions are going to be worth keeping and which ones aren't. And then if I have something like Obsidian where I'm integrating it, I can easily go through, delete what I don't want, add text to the top to kind of like, have my history of why I did it, when I did it, where
Yep.
you can't have that on the browser. So this is actually really helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. When I get back to my computer in a sec, let's also look at the there's a client for Mac. I think there are probably similar things for Windows that it's a separate app that you can use instead of the ChatGPT $20 a month account. And we can look at that with the API key. And then the other thing, Noemi, is let me show you how I export chats from the web interface. We've shown this before, I guess, in AI 101, but it might
Yeah,
be a
this is my
good
first
look
time here,
again.
but yeah, I would totally love that because I just copy and paste it
Yep,
into like either a Word document or Microsoft OneNote, which
yep,
has its pluses and minuses, but
yep.
yeah, that would be great.
Today is one of our rare rainy days in Southern California, so the dog is
I
wet.
also put it into other Word, or I've just started to use Notion, but it's so brand new. So learning where, this is a Corey, by the way. So learning where to and how to is really helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think using Notion is really helpful if you've for keeping track of your prompts and some images and things like that. But I think I hit a paywall with Notion, and I don't know. I just right now I have all these other services that I subscribe to, and I didn't want to have, okay, well, now I need Notion, now I need this, now I need that. There's a little bit of overlap too with some things, so I just didn't want to keep adding to the things. And before you know it, I'm spending $150 a month on just learning AI stuff. It just seemed like a lot for me.
Yeah, no, I
You
agree.
mentioned,
Right
oh,
now, I
sorry.
only have the one which is ChatGPT 4, and I've not gotten into Midjourney, and I've not gotten into ML and the Runway. Although I started to use it for the first time yesterday, and it's going to be hard to keep me away from it now, Peter. But I don't want to pay for it.
Naomi, you
Yeah.
mentioned Obsidian. Are you using Obsidian?
Corey, no.
I
I
just downloaded
Naomi, you
it, so I'm gonna
mentioned
start using it.
Obsidian. Are you using Obsidian?
No, I just when we started going through it and how Peter's using it, I downloaded it and I started to kind of play around with it a little bit.
I I know OneNote. I know of OneNote. I think it's really good, and it's got integrations, with the ecosystem and stuff like that. So I can't quite compare OneNote. So OneNote or Notion or Obsidian, they're kind of occupying the same functionality, right? Notion is amazing and wonderful, and I've seen people do. I saw somebody who was a Notion wizard, and she could definitely do things with Notion that I could not do with Obsidian. It was amazing. I could also tell that even me, it was complex enough that she had thought about it a lot and she had learned a lot of Notion tricks and tips. And if she just gave me her Notion thing, I would have a hard time even navigating through it. She could like whiz through it. I couldn't. If you just gave it to me, I'd have to learn how to whiz, along with the way that she set up the structure. For me, what my observation about Notion, and I like it, my observation about Notion is it's really good for using with a team. And then using it as an individual, it doesn't give me a lot more than Obsidian does. And then conversely, I feel like Obsidian gives me a lot more than Notion does as an individual. And even I'm using Obsidian with small teams too. We've kind of had to hack that, but it works pretty well. Um, Maybe not quite as smoothly as Notion, but we get extra benefits from using Obsidian. So, OneNote is great, Notion is great. Probably the Apple Notes thing is great. Logseek is great. Uh, the thing I keep going back to is when you're using Markdown, you get a bunch of benefits that we talked about. When you're using files on your computer, you get a bunch of benefits that we haven't really talked about. Obsidian uses files on your computer. So it kind of like collapses down to, I could be using Notion, but if I use Obsidian, I get extra benefits. Not least of
Obsidian,
which actually, sorry, go ahead, Corey.
sorry, is Obsidian a paid tool or not? And is it cloud only?
It's software that runs on your computer. It's free for personal use. And that's another benefit. Um, I feel a little bit conflicted saying this here because, but as a regular person, um, when I say, hey, I'm using this new thing called Obsidian, if you were using Obsidian too, we can share tips and tricks. I can actually give you chunks of my database, instead of saying, well, there's Notion and it's free to start, but it's, it gets, you start hitting a paywall. Obsidian's never going to hit a paywall. So I can tell my friend, can we use Obsidian together? And it's it's going to be a low barrier for entry for her. It's free to start with, free to use forever if you want. It uses your regular files, which means I can do things. And if I had this whole knowledge base here, I have to know a little bit how like everything is set up. And it takes, I understand it takes a little while to do that. But once you know how to do it, it's super easy to say, hey, I wish Corey had all of this on her computer. All I need to do is go to this and make a zip file of it.
But
And
it's
then
not open
poof,
source though. So if they
it isn't open
decide
source.
it is open source,
It is not open source. That's
yeah,
true.
that's what I was saying. It's not open source. So my concern would be like if they just stopped developing it, eventually it will go out of date and it may not work on your newer
And
machine as the
yes,
software gets updated. Yeah.
and that's another beautiful thing about using Obsidian rather than say Notion. What if Notion gets bought by Salesforce or Oracle or Microsoft, like Microsoft bought LinkedIn? What if Notion gets bought and it gets crazy? So the same thing could happen to Obsidian. I think they won't sell to somebody like that, but they could go bankrupt. They could get hit by multiple buses or something and die or whatever. Obsidian could go away. Nothing in Obsidian is locked into Obsidian. It's just text files.
Yeah, so
And
you could use Logseek instead.
they're always on my, I could use Logseek. I could use, there's another thing which is kind of a weird example to use. There's another thing that, well, actually, no, let me stick with a, there's another thing called Pulsar, which is originally it's originally for programmers and source code, but it works let me try to, I haven't used this for a while, so sorry for documents. GitHub. Thanks for bringing this one up, by the way, RJ, and I apologize for like stumbling through this a little bit, but and this is open source and it's kind of ugly looking because software developers like ugly things is the short answer, but let's see.
Did you say this is open source or?
Yeah, this is a piece of software called Pulsar. And I hate the dark theme, and there are a few things that are a little bit trickier. But if you look at it, it's almost the same as maybe that's a stretch.
HackMD?
I was gonna say it's almost the same as Obsidian. For me as a
Oh,
software developer looking at this, they have the same file navigation pane over here. They have the same things in the middle. They even have the same right-hand pane kind of. Let me take that back. This doesn't look, I understand this doesn't look anything like Obsidian. It's actually looking at if Obsidian was like a Toyota Camry or something like that, Pulsar is a little bit like looking at a military vehicle, like a Hummer, like a real Hummer, not a toy Hummer. So as a vehicle specialist, I would look at those and go, yeah, they're both vehicles. They're both four-wheeled vehicles. They go places. They carry a little bit of, it's not a truck. It's not an airplane. It's not a motorcycle. They're the same. Um, Obsidian and Pulsar are the same like that. It's a utility version of something that's, so is very, very, very similar to me. And I would understand that it's not very similar to somebody who's not used to utility vehicles. But worst comes to worst, Obsidian gets bought by Facebook, and you hate it, and you say, I'm never going to use Obsidian again. You just go over to something else. And I would say that just like moving from a Toyota Camry to a Hummer, it would work pretty much the same. The brake pedal and the gas are in the same place. The stick shift, I guess I come from a time when there was stick shifts. The steering wheel's in the same place. You sit on the side the same way. Switching to Pulsar would be a pretty easy lift. And another thing, I have friends where I say, hey, you got to use this amazing, cool tool, Obsidian, and the first thing they say is it open source? Because I believe in the open source ecosystem and I don't believe in corporate hegemony. And I would say, yeah, I'm sorry, Obsidian isn't open source, but why don't you use Pulsar? And then there's a way that when I'm using Obsidian with my friends, there's a couple different ways to make it so that you can do the same kind of thing with Notion where multiple people can be using the same thing at the same time. So I do that with my friends. We all use Obsidian, but we could be using Pulsar. And if Pulsar isn't enough for you, there's another thing called VS Code. VS Code is a very fancy programming editor from Microsoft. They kind of it's a kind of a re-implementation of something like Pulsar, but you can use VS Code and it's built on open source. There's a whole story about Microsoft and open source. This is not as open source as Pulsar, but it is kind of open source and it's yet another tool that you could use instead of Obsidian. And if if you don't like that, there's nothing stopping you from, let me go back to,
you can use Emacs.
you could use Emacs. You can use TextEdit or Notepad. The TextEdit is the Mac version of Notepad. Literally, like if somebody said, hey, Pete, make a backup of, quick, the house is burning down. I wouldn't stop to make a backup. But I know that I have this amazing information system here, and this is a small one for me. All I have to do is make a zip file of this. Did I already do this? If I put this on a thumb drive, I can bring it to my grandma's house. I don't know what kind of computer she has. I'm not going to install any software on it. I can unzip this on her computer and use Notepad or whatever, and I'm good as gold. I still have everything there. So, or I can give the zip file to a friend and say, here's my whole knowledge base, or there's better ways to share it than a zip file, but you don't need any special tools to use and manipulate and manage your Obsidian vault. It's all just text files on your computer.
How long does it take to like learn to use Obsidian to the point where it's useful for a person? Like like the learning curve, how steep is it?
I think it's a really good question. And I'm trying to, by the way, not a plug, but I'm trying to answer that question with this course, which you can buy for $0. I swear this is not a plug. The idea of this is to, what would it take to get somebody started with Obsidian? And that's the idea of this. I made this 29-minute video, after talking about it a long time and after some AI 101 things. It's funny, I showed it to a friend and he said, Pete, you didn't show the most amazing thing about Obsidian, which is links. And it was because I didn't want to overwhelm people. I'm going to continue to improve this. Right now, you get the first 29-minute video. I'm going to add more videos, I think smaller ones that says, okay, here's how to, start Obsidian. Okay, now we're done. Like, go take a break, come back, and then we'll talk about the very next thing to do with Obsidian. Something like that. I'll keep making more stuff in here. So
And
the
another question I might, oh, sorry.
mm, the next thing I want to get back to your question. How easy is it to get started with Obsidian? But
Yeah,
ask your
sorry,
question.
sorry.
You want to? You got a question or?
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, my question is, would you recommend that people sort of see whether they like the interface first before they spend a huge amount of time getting up a huge learning curve? And the reason I asked that is because I tried LogSeq first because it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like it was really good at outlining and was a better choice for me than Obsidian. But the more I started to use it, and I realized I really don't like the way it feels to use the interface, the moving around. I felt too much friction.
Yep.
And even though it's LogSeq seems good in many ways, I realized it's like very uncomfortable for me to use. It would be like for me to try to drive a Humvee instead of driving a Camry. So
Yep.
even though the Humvee might do all kinds of cool, powerful things, and I wouldn't want to have to get up a huge learning curve about trying to use a Humvee, only to realize, hey, I just don't like driving this darn thing. So maybe I should be trying a Camry out instead.
Um. The virtual buddy. I was bringing this up while RJ was asking his great question there because virtual buddy is free and an amazing thing. It lets you run a Mac inside your Mac. So I was thinking we could actually go through the process of starting with Obsidian on a fresh Mac. That may or may not be worth doing because I want to. I haven't started this Mac, or I guess. So by the way, what I just did there, you'll see that I have a fresh Mac, and then I made a copy of that fresh Mac, and this has got very few things installed on it. Maybe this will just work. Let's start going. Let me make it big.
So
So
they're
the thing
asking
I
what's a virtual buddy. So basically it's sort of, is it like a sandbox or it's a virtual PC basically that's running on your PC?
um yeah, those are both reasonable things. Yeah. I'm gonna guess that. Huh. Okay, it took a little while for the networking to wake up. Virtual Buddy is a. Let me try to get out of. Apology for the blank screen. I've got a hot corner. If I go all the way up to the top left, my screen blanks, so I can walk away from it and not have the screen on all the time. Going back here, this is a Mac only thing. On Windows, there's a thing called VirtualBox, which is maybe not the thing that you want to do, but VirtualBox would do kind of the same thing. I think there might be a better one now for Windows, but you can run this program, and then inside this, you can have different virtual, pretend, fake sandbox, maybe is another way to say it. It's a whole computer running inside your computer. And the advantage of that is you can have different operating system versions. You can install something that you think might be, that you might want to throw away, it might junk up your computer. You can have snapshots of your virtual computer in different states, right? You might have one that's set up for photographic workflow and one that's set up for video editing or something like that. Probably video editing is a bad example because this is a computer running inside your computer, there's going to be some overhead of CPU and even storage and stuff like that. But anyway, let's pretend we're we have a brand new Mac, and we want to start using Obsidian. To answer RJ's question, and it's you articulated it well there, I think. Sorry for me fumbling around while I'm trying to. I have my Mac set up just a tiny bit different, and so this is a fresh Mac, like I just bought it. A few things are installed, like my password manager and stuff, but otherwise. So here's me installing, any software application on the Mac. This is how you install software. And then I like to right click on that and say eject. So now in my application folder, which is another thing I have a shortcut key to. Here's Obsidian. I'm running it for the first time. I'll minimize Safari. The way to get started with Obsidian, I think, is to start it and then start to use it, but maybe start to also learn a couple ways that you can do the same thing with the tools that you're familiar with, rather than just Obsidian.
Oh, I have a question. So one reason I jumped into Logseq also was they actually had a virtual version, an online version that I could play with first.
Yeah.
Do they
yeah.
have an online version of Obsidian so a person can play with it, see whether they like it?
No.
No? Okay.
Which I think is not a problem. It is nice to be able to try something online, but it's easy to install it on your computer. It works for Windows and Mac. This is another thing where it's like, hey, buddy, can we learn Obsidian together? I know you have Windows, I have Mac, or vice versa, but you know that it's going to work in both places. So the fortunate or unfortunate thing with Obsidian is it doesn't fall out of the box and help you start using it. I think like something like Notion probably does a better job if you're a beginning user. It has little flashing. I don't know this about Notion, but I'm starting a new thing. It has a little like bouncing or flashing things that say try this, try that, and it shows you a quick guide. So that introduction to Obsidian course on Gumroad that I've got is meant to kind of bridge this gap, right? And I think it doesn't do a good job of it yet. I haven't even I'm scared to go back and look at that 29-minute video because I think I did it all wrong and I want to redo it. But anyway, so the main thing to do when you're starting with Obsidian is not to freak out. It's a little bit complicated and you need someone to help to hold your hand through the first few days with it or something like that. And it's not like it's scary. You're not going to break anything. It's like, okay, so now I've got this blank screen. What do I do? That's the only problem that you have. And not to pick on you, RJ, you did an eminently reasonable and perfectly wonderful thing to do, you're like, yeah, okay, I get the point of Obsidian. It's not, maybe not for me. I'm going to try something else. Um, the thing I would recommend with Obsidian is to stick with it for a little bit, and we'll talk about why Obsidian rather than Logseek, or rather than Roam, or rather than, we kind of talked a little bit about rather than Notion. All of those tools are great, and if they sing to you, then you should do that. No question. Obsidian it ticks all these boxes, that, once you start ticking, kind of like Noemi said, I don't need 50 things. I need like 3 things that work really, really well. Obsidian is kind of one of those things that you can use it in multiple ways. It covers things really well. So it's worth going through this little bit of scared or concerned or, just bored looking at this going, I have no idea. This is a little bit too powerful for me. It's too hard. I'm not going to use it. I swear it's not. And I've brought a bunch of non-technical people into Obsidian, and, you know, and I have their experience also as a, kind of a testimony. I can say it's not just me. It's a bunch of non-technical people I've done. So done this with. So they don't really tell you. And by the way, another thing another way to get started with Obsidian, you can either use Pete's Intro to Obsidian course, pay $0 for it. That's fine. You can also go to YouTube and search for Obsidian Beginner. You'll find a bunch of stuff. Um, you know, uh, watch a few, pick the ones that you like. Don't stick with any one of them, that you don't like. Just find something. You'll probably find something similar, right? Somebody kind of going through this. So what I said to RJ is the strategy here, and because I know Obsidian a little bit, I'm going to start taking notes. Right up here is new notes, new note and new folder. I'm going to type new note. And this is actually a good thing to do for anybody getting started with Obsidian. Take notes of the process. So don't freak out. Know that you can use other tools along with Obsidian. And this is a big key tactic, I think. It's not obvious immediately, and this is not the way that you use most software, but it's a really good tactic to use Obsidian with. Find a beginner guide. Okay, so one thing you'll see that I did already is like, yeah, I could have taken that in notes instead. Maybe I know notes really well. I have to say I don't. But I could have done that in notes. It's like, well, let me try it in Obsidian. Let's see how bad it is. You'll also see that I know Markdown already, so I automatically used Markdown. You don't have to have done that. Um, so
Did
then
you say they have shortcut keys or something to if a person doesn't know Markdown? Is there any like
for
um,
the one I know about for Obsidian is up here. Here's the bullet list, and I can do format here. And then bold and italics, of course, is Command B and Command I. I would guess
can you
that either
assign
there's,
shortcut keys?
yes,
Yeah.
you can assign shortcut keys amazingly well
Okay.
with Obsidian. They're called hotkeys. And it's actually one of the superpowers of Obsidian. I don't use them very much because I'm always teaching beginners more than I'm using Obsidian as a power tool. but a power user of Obsidian is got hotkeys up the wazoo, and they're well tuned to what they do. I'm guessing also that I I think I would imagine that there's like one of those bars with the icons for bold, italic, whatever. I would imagine that you could enable something like that. I don't know how to do it, and we won't poke around. So here's like this is maybe the first day or the first hour or whatever. It's like, okay, I typed a note in Obsidian. I'm done for now. I'm going to close my computer. I'm going to get a fun kombucha or something, and I'll come back tomorrow and start again. So I come back tomorrow and I start again. The kind of the first thing to get used to is these sidebars. So there's a sidebar over here, and you can turn it on and off by clicking that icon. And then there's a sidebar over here, and you can turn it on and off by clicking that icon. So I don't know if that's a whole day, but let's call this lesson one. Maybe numbers. And then I'll do it this way instead of format bold. I recommend you figure out how to use headings rather than bold. So then that's like lesson 3 or 4 or something. So I already skipped ahead a little bit, but I didn't have to know Markdown for that. I just did format header. Okay, so then lesson 2. And then again, I'm using this formatting more for information structure than for prettiness, even though it's kind of the same thing. The reason I'm using it is for prettiness. And maybe to skip ahead a little bit, remember this is how it started out. It didn't tell you that there's toolbars or sidebars, but I told you there's sidebars, and now you have the power to open them and close them. Over on this sidebar, there's a cool thing. This is confusing that this icon and this icon are the same. That's another thing kind of with Obsidian. I don't know, the UX is good. It's not great. And I would call this kind of a UX bug. What I was looking for was this one. Here's an outline mode. Wow, that's cool. And I think actually let me try a test here. I think it sets up to navigate to it too. So if I had like 50 lessons here or 10 lessons maybe, this would be an outline view that I could use to get back and forth between those things. By the way, HackMD has that same, it has that outline. You can do the outline thing too with a HackMD. I won't go find it. So lesson 2, I feel like I deleted something. Yep. Another thing to get used to is to experiment with, so all the AI people know this already, but you play around and you try different things a little bit, so I wanted to try if the navigation worked. So I made extra space and tried that, and it worked. That's cool. So sidebars is like lesson 2. And then another thing to notice, once you type, you start a bullet, Obsidian, if you just kind of leave it alone, will continue the bullets, and it works like a regular kind of WYSIWYG editor. So, and then to indent, it's pretty much the same as a regular editor. I just do tab. So sidebars, turning them on and off, and explore the functions, I'll call them, inside each sidebar. So the functions are up at the top here. Backlinks we don't know about yet. Forward links we don't know about yet. Tags, that's interesting. We don't know about that yet. And outlines. This is something that we're used to from other tools, so maybe outlines is a good place to start with. Over here, let's see what we got. We've got files. Okay. I can search for things. That's cool. And I can bookmark things. All cool stuff. So now let's go to the lesson 3. I'm going to pretend I know Markdown now and actually type in Markdown. So lesson 3 is using your familiar tools. There's kind of a funny thing here where it used to be a familiar tool for people was text edit, and now the familiar tool for people would be notes. Like in the olden days, we only had text edit and Notepad. We didn't have fancy things like OneNote or Notes. But maybe I can hope, I didn't want to do that. Oops, I didn't want to do that either. On the Mac, by the way, you can drag stuff over here and it'll stay around. I'm going to close OneNote. I'm going to go to Finder and Applications. I hope at least some people still know text edit because it's super useful. So this maybe is a big jump, but it's a pretty useful one. When you're using Obsidian, you end up entering this whole ecosystem of Markdown enabled stuff. And I can guess that that doesn't sound very exciting from the starting point, but in the ending point, it's super, super useful. So a thing to know about Obsidian is every note that you start, and let's make a couple notes here. I can go over like 15 minutes or so, I think. Well, I'm gonna keep going for 15 minutes. If folks want to drop, that's cool too. So now I have different notes.
And those are all different MD files, Markdown files.
Yeah. Since now we have an interesting thing, if I go to files and if I go to my getting started with my notes page, I wonder if I can search for a needle. Yeah, look at that. It finds a needle. That's cool. So yes, as RJ was saying, these are just Markdown files on my computer. And maybe I don't know what Markdown is. You can kind of when you say Markdown, you kind of can also say text. So they're text files on my computer. I happen to know this is advanced knowledge, but I would teach this to somebody like in lesson 3. I know that I can say reveal in Finder, and then look, I've got regular text files. Let me open that with text edit. Look, it's a regular text file. This is so awesome, so cool. I did a command +++ to zoom in on that. So note 3 is a stupid name for this thing. And I don't know how to rename stuff on Obsidian very well yet, but I do know how to rename stuff on Finder. So let me try doing that. It's probably important if I leave that .md, so I'm going to leave the .md. So now it's called Haystack, which is a better thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I had to do open with text edit. So there's a kind of a glitch in my lesson plan here where I'm going to need to help people set their Markdown editor. But anyway, open with text edit. So now Notepad is smart enough, or sorry, text edit. Text edit is smart enough to pick the change there, pick up the change in the file name. maybe we'll search for a fork later. And I can do Command S to save it there. You saw it was editing. I did Command S. So Obsidian automatically picked up that change of the name. And look, I edited over here and it changed over here. Let's try that again. So it didn't change here. And that's because TextEdit doesn't save things until I do like file save or Command S. So let me try that. As soon as I saved it though, Obsidian picked it up. I like to use a different text editor, and it's a Markdown editor, and it saves automatically all the time. So they actually stay in sync, even while I'm working in this other text editor, not TextEdit. But all I had to do was Command S there, and it saved it. So so now we got out of the clutches of Obsidian, and we can just use regular files and regular text files. So that's great. So now I would suggest to people this is an entirely reasonable thing to do, and it's really odd for most applications. Most applications, you stay inside the application. Obsidian is super friendly with other applications using its files, and vice versa. If maybe I figure out how to rename this here, I can right click it and say rename. So it renamed it here. It's also renamed here. So maybe I would try that a few times. You know, can I really do this if I have a text file somewhere else? And I think this might not quite work the way we're doing this, but let's see. Offhand, I don't know. I don't know how a Mac person is supposed to know that where to find that, but I know it's here, I guess. So here's a file called another text file. And I started this one someplace else. What if I have a whole bunch of text files that I have that I want in Obsidian? How's that going to work? And check it out. Obsidian Vault is inside my documents. That's cool. So I wonder what happens if I take a text file from someplace else and put it in Obsidian. And I'm going to be bummed that it's not showing up. It turns out that I think Obsidian is really going to want these to be called .md. Maybe that'll work. Maybe not. The problem here, sorry, I keep clicking random things. The problem here is I saved it in RTF. So I wonder what would happen if I save this. Let me make a copy of this. Oops. I've got that new computer thing since I'm on a computer that I'm not quite set up the way I usually do it. Let me start over. Let me start another file. This time, maybe a text file. Great. So when I saved this before, it said, what format do you want to use? Oh. ASDF and sad. I'll try this offline. I think where I'm getting to is TextEdit by default likes to be an RTF, and Obsidian's not going to play with an RTF file. It wants a text file. So it's super easy to change that. But I wasn't very good at doing that by myself. And I don't, oh, this is because it's .md, I think. No. So I need a little work on that lesson. But anyway, that's back to RJ's question. My suggestion is pretty quickly start to use your tools as well as Obsidian. And there's a funny thing, even though I'm, you could call me an Obsidian expert. I'm actually not. I don't use a lot of the facilities of Obsidian because I want to keep my knowledge close to people just starting with it. I still do that. It's very common for me to be using Typora as a text editor rather than Obsidian. I just like the look and feel of Typora better. So Obsidian has that quality where it doesn't care which, it doesn't care where the files come from or what modulo the mix-up I had there. And if I'm using Typora instead of text edit, Typora saves right away in a way that it saves often, maybe not right away. It saves often enough that they're usually in sync. And it also picks up changes well when I make a change in Obsidian. It picks up in Typora well. Cool. I skittered away. Let me answer a question. Corey had a question, where do I save everything? It's super funny. I started running out of space because I saved so many AI images and I bought an external drive. I don't want to unplug it right now. Maybe, well, for another time. I decided to get an SSD drive and then I did a funny thing. I'll DM Corey later. I did a funny thing and I bought kind of a DIY thing, SSD drive, which isn't very DIY, but it's kind of cool. And then for Noemi, I was going to talk about ChatGPT Exporter, which is not, it's a bit of an advanced thing. It works with the ChatGPT web interface, and it's a thing that installs a button here that says export, and then you can export a single thing, like to Markdown. It downloads a Markdown file for you, which went here in my downloads. And then I can drag this into Obsidian, super easy, and then it'll pop up as an Obsidian file. The really cool thing about ChatGPT Exporter is you can say export all as Markdown. So you can select some of these, or you can select all of them and then export. And it runs through all the conversations that you've had, saves them all as Markdown files, and then you copy the whole thing over to either your existing Obsidian vault where you keep everything, or I copied over to a separate Obsidian vault. So then rather than picking and choosing, I export everything because I'm a bit of a pack rat. And then I would go in, kind of like Noemi said, go in and add a tag or something, or add a page with links to your favorite conversations, duplicate the conversations, do editing with it, all that kind of stuff. You'll see that I only have 170 conversations here, and that's because I try to do this fairly regularly. And then I export them, and then so they don't re-export them again, I literally delete them from the web interface. And then because Obsidian is super great at searching lots of text files, managing lots of text files, and searching lots of text files. Another thing like lesson 5 or 6 would be use more than one vault. You don't want to use lots of vaults, but there's no reason not to have more than one. So now you can do a search. Through all the conversations I've ever had with ChatGPT, right? I know that one of the things I do a lot with ChatGPT is I'll say create a visual description. So if I wanted to go back and find a way that I was, what was that prompt that I used to get those amazing Midjourney prompts? I can search for that pretty quickly. There you go.
All right, you convinced me. I'll try it out, but I want to see how it compares to a Camry.
To what? A Camry, yeah. It's a little bit
I
more
want
like a
to see
Jeep.
how it compares to a Camry. If this is going to
Yeah,
be like a Humvee,
it's a little bit more like a Jeep. It's not quite a Camry. The
it
the
is,
thing
I
though
think.
is
Yeah.
it ended up being because it's written in Markdown, people picked it up and started using it who maybe weren't even, they're using it for different things, like exactly like this, right? Um, Markdown is a de facto standard kind of thing. So it's ChatGPT thinks in Markdown, or at least talks with us in Markdown, and then somebody could make an exporter that works in Markdown. And so now that I know how to use Obsidian as a personal knowledge manager, I also know how to use Obsidian as a ChatGPT navigator, conversation navigator. I also know how to use it as I have a system to build websites from a Obsidian Vault, which is the thing that this is the thing where I junk up stuff. I'm going to delete everything here. I delete all the all these test things, but this is literally how I maintain the AI 101 website, is by having Obsidian files, yada yada yada, right? Getting over that little bit of pain and boredom, mostly boredom, but a little bit of pain trying to figure out where all the buttons are and which buttons are which. Getting over that, so I can't do each of those things with Notion very easily. I can do each of those things and many more with Obsidian. And then if there isn't, some way that I've done it, there's 1,000 community plugins that, somebody has done, the calendar mode, by the way, is, I don't know if this is the calendar this is sorted by downloads, I think. There's some calendar task management stuff that you can do with Obsidian that is amazing. This Excalibur plugin is amazing if you use it. This data view thing gets you some ways to do like query kinds of things, query management stuff that helps you find or organize your files better in Obsidian. Just like on and on. There's a whole bunch of like amazing ecosystem stuff that you get once you can use Obsidian a little bit. So going through
Yeah.
that pain and boredom, for a couple weeks, a week, a couple weeks, a month, or whatever, it's not that hard. And if you don't like, the built-in stuff, you can use your tools. This might be Bear. This is Typora. I can use TextEdit here. Yeah, I can use Finder. I can limp around and get stuff done without being stuck in Obsidian as I'm learning Obsidian. And then it just keeps on giving back, the capability I have. It's like a big power tool.
Okay. Corey had a question about the GPT export. Is that something that's free with the OpenAI, or did you have to?
It's let me find my browser again. I have a caveat for this, and we went over this in length on another AI 101 call. So maybe I'll find that in the AI 101 call and kind of put it as a chapter. It's free. It's a free plugin, but it uses there's two layers of plugins to enable one of them is Grease, no, not Monkey, Temper Monkey. I have to have a Temper Monkey plugin installed, and then on top of that, I have a Chat GPT exporter script installed, and you need to be aware of the security stuff involved in that.
Yeah.
I think it's
Did you
safe,
have a
but
hard stop right now?
I don't.
Did you have a hard, say you had a hard stop right now?
No, I
Okay.
have about 15. And now it's getting into 20. I can keep going for a little bit.
Okay. Somebody was asking if you could do the Phoenix next time, talk about Phoenix.
Phoenix doesn't ring a bell for me offhand.
That was the
Yeah,
picture
yeah, yeah.
viewer, whatever it
Phoenix
was called.
slides.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful and wonderful tool. Yes. Would love to do that. Yeah. There's before we leave ChatGPT exporter, there's some other ways you can do it besides this particular tool. I think I'm okay with the privacy security concerns of this. I think I could explain to somebody else what to watch for. If you don't use this without understanding the security and privacy concerns of the two levels of plugins you need to enable it. The 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 way to get around that, if you don't want to trust it, I think there are other. I know of at least one tool, the one that's broken right now, and I'll try to get it fixed. I may be able to fix it, maybe not. I had this set up, and it's broken right now. I had this set up to do exports, and this one is safe to use. And you can actually, since it's a website, you could use it on your phone and stuff like that. So that capability of exporting stuff all at once, I think you can find other ways. And then let me show you real quick, Corey, let me drop the screen share and we'll wrap up. I would love to go into another thing about storage, and storage is a long time thing I've been moving forward on. I've got a 1 terabyte drive, and it has been awesome. I've been using this computer for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And I just save stuff. I save random stuff to this drive all the time, and it's been wonderful. And then finally, at some point, not too long ago, I'm down to like 75 gigs. I'm going to run out of space really quick. So let me show off my new toy. If I can find the freaking desktop, there it is there. So this is an external drive. I need to be, I want to unplug it and show it to you on the camera. Like a thumb drive or something like that, you need to eject it before you pull it, or you might corrupt all the data on it. I'm going to eject that, and then I'm going to click the little power button, which turns it off. This isn't something I quite recommend, but it's actually, this is another one of those things. Make sure you understand the implications of this. Most people, or let me do this a different way before I show you that, because I don't want you to get fixated on it, even though I think it's awesome. Let me go to Amazon. Or maybe go to, I don't know, I'll just use my Amazon. That's fine. If you search for external USB hard drive, you get these 2 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 5 terabytes. This computer's internal drive is 1 terabyte. If you're backing up, if you're a photographer and you're backing up lots of files, you get like you start at 4 terabytes or 8 terabytes or 12 terabytes. They get bigger. So this is probably about, this is the size of a deck of cards and a half or something like that.
Are you intending to be sharing now?
Excellent question, RJ. Thank you very much. I get all excited sometimes when I drop that share, and then I can't even find Zoom now to share. Yes, I intended to share. All I got to was this. Let me do that search again. If you search for external USB hard drive, 2 terabyte, 5 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 4 terabyte, what size do I want? You want a terabyte anymore. Even a 2 terabyte drive is pretty cheap.
Wow, that's really cheap.
I wouldn't bother anymore with a 500 gig drive, although this would, if you had to limp by, there's also about excuse me, just a sec. There's only like 4 or 5 brands that I would trust. Seagate, Western Digital, Toshiba, Lossy. Yeah, there's only a few more. Don't buy a drive. Toshiba is great. Don't buy a random brand name drive. So all of these use, they're like a regular hard drive. They have a spinning magnetic platter in them, which means they're mechanical. They'll last a long, long time, except they might not. And that's true of any hard drive. Any hard drive, you kind of have to expect that it might break at any time. If you really care about the files you have them at least on 2 hard drives, maybe 3, all the time. Any file that you care about, because you never know when a hard drive is just going to stop. So so these are spinning ones, which is cool and all. There's a new thing now. You can get an external SSD, a solid state one. This is kind of like a big thumb drive. So it's big enough that it's not a thumb drive anymore. It has a cable, but it's not very big. It's like the size of 2 thumb drives physically, and it carries a lot of space, 2 terabytes. So it turns out that this is maybe we'll talk another time about the trade-offs between, these are like twice the price, maybe, yeah, 2 or 3 times the price of a mechanical one. It's a little bit more rugged. If you dropped one of these, it wouldn't matter. If you dropped one of the mechanical ones, you'd be a little worried that you might have broken it. They're pretty secure, but these can be a lot faster, I think. An SSD, solid state drive, is going to be a lot faster. So then it turns out, let me move this off the screen and make sure that I'm going to look at all my orders, and I don't want to show you all my orders. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, it turns out this is not at least down to here. I buy rice crackers. These are great rice crackers. This is the order that I got yesterday. Instead of a nicely packaged external SSD drive, you can use the same kind of chip thing that's in the middle of it. This chip thing is built for computers. So like inside my Mac, inside your computer, if it's solid state, which a lot of them are, it's got this instead it's got this instead of a spinning one. So you can buy this, and then now I'm getting off-road. I'm into Jeep level, and I'm rapidly approaching Hummer level here. But so I don't recommend this, but I recommend you think about it, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit more. You can buy enclosures for these, sorry. So you can build your own from what usually goes inside a computer and a little box. You can put them together, and you've got an external SSD drive. So I went a little bit, I went Hummer level on it, because I can, I guess, or something. So what I bought was, this is that little stick. This is a whole hard drive. Hard drives used to be, like a big thing. Now this is a hard drive that goes inside a computer, and it's not really a spinning disk.
Your
it's just
sharing stopped
chips.
for some reason.
Yeah, and now you should look at the screen, and maybe you should change to speaker view or something like that. I'm using my camera.
I can see you.
Yeah.
Okay, I
can't
thought
see
you
you.
meant to be screen sharing. Sorry. All right. I
Um,
gotta turn the
so
video on. Normally I keep
so
it
this
off
is
because it.
yeah. Um, I could have bought that external enclosure, a box for this, but somebody said, huh, you know, you can buy one of these instead. This is a docking station. So now this chip thing um, holds a terabyte of data. I have to be a little bit gentle with this. If I dropped it, it might be okay. If I got it wet, it would probably be okay. I would be scared to death. If I shuffled across the floor and touched these pins with my static electricity, I think I might fry it. So this is a reason. Those are reasons, you know, I'm a professional. Don't try this at home. It turns out these are pretty reliable and stuff. And then what I can do is I can buy this. This costs $60. This costs $30. Now I can buy as many of these $60 ones as I want, and then I can plug it in here, and then pretend this is like this, or pretend it's one of those things in a box, or either that you assembled or that you bought ready-made, a nice SanDisk or something. Um, this works like a thumb drive. It also works like another thing I've got plugged into my computer is the size of a big paperback book. I've got another hard drive, a 12 terabyte drive that I do like long-term backups on. That plugs in. So I think Corey maybe asked if you bought. Now I'll go back to screen sharing. Um, I wouldn't recommend the thing I just showed you because it's delicate. For a desktop, I think it's fine. For walking around your house, it's probably not fine. Um, sorry, external. So for walking around your house, maybe you wouldn't pick one of these that has a spinning thing. Maybe you would pick an SSD, and then it would be faster. It would be a lot more resilient. So to get one of those, you type SSD, and you pay 2 or 3 times as much. But these are very durable, kind of like a thumb drive. So now I've said a lot about reliability and durability and stuff like that. Thumb drives, regular thumb drives, I don't have one on my desk anymore. Regular thumb drives, USB external, let's see, USB drive, thumb drive is usually what I would say. If you have one of these, you should know that the data on this, don't trust these for long-term storage of data. It's super easy to copy stuff onto them. They're nice and cute to store or to throw in a drawer. Kind of assume that these are going to hold the data for, you know, a week or 2 weeks or a month or 6 months. Past that, I would expect it. Pretend that it's going to vanish. It's going to rot away. The SSD drives, we're still kind of figuring out a drive like this or like this. This is probably smaller than it looks, by the way. This is probably half the size of a deck of cards. Maybe it's the size of a deck of cards, but flatter or something. One of these, they'll hold the data for, assume without being plugged in, it'll be around for a couple months, 6 months. Assume that it's not going to be around in a year. So make sure you plug it in and leave it plugged in for a little while for the internal electronics to make sure that everything's charged up and safe. Somebody did say, I had one of these lying around for 3 years. I plugged it in. It's fine. Don't worry about it. That's living on the edge. So even a spinning drive, external USB drive, these backup things, assume that, you know, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, it's going to start, the data on it is going to start being corrupted. And the way to get around that is to plug it in every 6 months or a year maybe, and literally copy the whole hard drive from one to another, copy it back and forth. The SSDs, all you have to do is plug them in and leave them sit for a little while, maybe use a little bit. The spinning hard drives, the data is going to go away at some point, and you want to copy all the data over to another thing. So then you start to get into network attack storage and RAID and stuff like that. I have one of these in my garage. um,
Wow.
and it took a lot to decide to buy buy a $600 box. This is without any hard drives in it, so you have to go buy hard drives to stick in it. Um, and then and then it gets this whole OCD thing. So you're gonna have to buy like another $600 worth of hard drives to stick in it. And then I found myself going, what happens if I'm writing my backups to this thing? This is for like long-term backups. And part of the reason you buy this instead of like just taking a hard drive, one of those backup hard drives and sticking it in a drawer is because this thing sits around. Most of the time it's incredibly bored, but every once in a while it wakes up and it goes, huh, today is the day that I'm going to check all the bits on all the drives and make sure I'm going to swap them around and make sure it's safe. It does that like every month. So I know that the data on this thing is going to be there for as long as I keep it. Um, and we're up to like $1,200 at this point. I found myself needing a UPS, the UPS. What if I'm writing data to this while the power goes out and I corrupt like a whole, sector of stuff? I would hate that. So then I spent a couple $100 on a UPS. So literally I can go in and pull the plug, and it'll keep humming away on battery power. The UPS talked to this thing and it says, hey, hard drive thing, we just lost power. I got you for like 20 minutes, but maybe you should start powering down. So this thing is smart enough to listen to the UPS and go, huh, I'm freaking out. I'm going to shut down. I want to make sure that piece data is safe. And it does all of that automatically. Um, so that's what you do if you've got, like super important data that you need to keep around forever. The big lesson is don't trust hard drives. Don't trust a single hard drive to keep your data forever. It won't. And I learned that lesson the hard way. My dad scanned a bunch of our family photos, and I had it on this thumb drive. I kept it super safe, like right in front of my monitor. I always knew where it was. And, 2 years later, it's all corrupted. And so there you go. We can go through this storage thing again and do a Pete, do I really need a 4-bay NAS, a 2-bay one? What about RAID? What about, software RAID, hardware RAID, all that kind of stuff. It's super fun to talk about. It's a pain in the butt, but the first time you lose something important to you, you get religion and you go, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously.
Well, I'm glad you warned me because I have a lot of those little cheapy USB thumb drives. So, but I haven't ever had any data loss that I know of, but I did read in the past that that can happen, especially if you read write to them, because they only can take a certain amount of read writes. That's my
That's true
understanding.
of even this guy, and the computer in my Mac, or sorry, the hard drive in my Mac. The hard drive in my Mac looks like this. I've never seen it, but it looks like that. Um, uh, they only last for 100,000 writes or read writes, or a million, or sorry, writes, a million or something like that. So they will wear out. Um, they've got they've got extra storage, and there's a chip inside that says, huh, this one looks, this one looks a little bit wobbly. This bit looks a little bit wobbly. I'm gonna like outline that and blacklist it, and I'm gonna replace it with this spare. So it does that all the time internally. They'll last a long time. The fancier you get, a cheap thumb drive with no name thumb drive is going to lose data quicker and probably have less write cycles. And then the external SSD in a case is going to be pretty solid. These are even more solid than that, I think. But and the trick, same like what I said with backups and hard drives. If you've got a USB thumb drive, if it's not important data, hope that it's safe, and if it's the case, that's fine. If it's important, you should copy it at least to another thumb drive regularly. And to do that, you'd want to check to make sure that all the files aren't corrupted. You would use Phoenix slides to go through every single image to make sure it's not corrupted or something, or whatever. So you move it to better and better storage, and you're not done until you've got it in that you know, 4 slot NAS with a UPS. That's when you're done, like walking up the levels. And you don't have to walk up all the levels. You know, it depends how much you care about your data. I've got another, by the way, I've got another backup system
Yeah.
for my passwords. I didn't want to trust even my NAS, I think. So I figured out a way to get it encrypted, and I've got it printed on paper. Paper and print stays around for hundreds of years. So I wanted like to save my passwords in case my great grandkids, you know, had something that they wanted to get into. So I do have a backup printed on paper. It takes a lot of paper to store a little bit of data. So it was just my passwords that I backed up that way. But you know, you can put that in a safe deposit box or send it to your friends. You can read it. You can read all the numbers, you know, the numbers and letters of the encryption, but you can't decrypt it unless you have the secret password. I thought I was very clever doing that.
Cool.
I wrote that up and posted it somewhere. So someday maybe we'll cover that. It's
Cool.
Thanks, folks, so much. I will get this recording up this weekend, and also a link into some of the other AI 101 sessions that haven't been up for a while. I'm behind, but I'll catch up this weekend.
Thank you so much. This covered so many practical things today.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Pete.
Happy to do it. We'll see you all around. Thanks.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.